so we continue working on the King's Gambit, and in this chapter we'll discover that the King's Gambit is not only an aggressive opening by white, it is also one of the first openings ever played in chess history. What we'll do now, we'll take a look at some games played by Greco against unknown players. These are also the first games you'll find in the Mega database, and I think this is useful because we can see all the possible tricks in the King's Gambit, and most of these games, they were played in 1620. I mean, it's like 400 years back, so old games, as I was saying. And yeah, let's get started. One of the first games, these are short games by the way, but I think this is a good exercise to analyze them because we get to know all the possible tricks, some variations black can play. And of course we have the bishop c4 line. Remember that knight f3 is also another possibility for white, but as I said in other chapters, if we play knight f3, we avoid queen h4 check, and we basically invite black to play better moves. So bishop c4, this move is spicy, and in the first game black plays knight to e7. Not the best move, but it is definitely a possibility, and apart from preparing knight g6, overprotecting the pawn on f4, he also has the idea of playing d5. So in this position, technically the best move for white is knight c3. Well, at least that's what I think, because knight c3 we basically control the d5 square, and later on we can play d4, we can try taking this pawn on f4, we can build up a strong center as white, and this knight here is not good. It is on the way of black's development. So knight c3 is a very good move to meet knight e7, but in this game Greco plays queen f3, attacking the pawn on f4. Black protects with knight g6, and here white plays d4. Not only occupying the center, we are also stopping knight e5. So after d4, here is where black starts making mistakes and plays queen h4 check. As we know, this check is usually a bad idea for black, and it would be better for him if he continues developing his pieces, say bishop e7, or even a move like d5. We know how good this move is for black. Even if he loses a pawn, he manages to open lines for his pieces, so this was a better option. But in this game, black plays queen h4 check, and I like this, I mean, for us, because this is what our opponents are likely to play. And here we have the simple g3. We cover the check, we attack the queen on h4, and the thing is, if he takes, I mean, our rook on h1 is not hanging. That is the reason why we can play this move. In other scenarios, we can just meet queen h4 with king f1. So this is not the case because rook h1 is protected, so is the pawn on e4. And here black, you can still play something like queen f6 or queen d8. Well, queen d8 is probably too passive, and queen f6 is met with e5, and in all scenarios I think white is much better, but at least black is still in the game. What he played in this game is simply losing. He takes, and here he simply misses an in-between move, which is bishop takes f7. You're probably wondering what happens if we play queen takes f7. This move looks crashing for white, but the thing is he plays king d8, and we no longer have checks. We have to deal with the threat of g2 check, and also the rook on h1 is hanging. Queen takes e4 as well. Pawn takes h2. So a lot of threats, and it is impossible for us to stop all of them, and that is why queen takes f7 is not a good move. We can also take the pawn, but then he can just play queen e7 or queen f6. I still think we have a better position. Even here, if we trade queens off, his king side is a disaster. So after pawn takes, this move is much better, and black is simply losing. King d8, now we can take, and we are playing the same variation with an extra pawn with his king on d8, and black, he has to move the queen one more time. Here, no matter what he plays, he loses. As you can see, we have a lot of things going on the h file, and bishop takes knight is probably our next move. If he plays queen e7, I can just take. He cannot take because rook h8 is hanging. And after queen f6, well, white, this time we want to trade queens off because we played this next, and we are simply up a piece. And this is what happened in this first game, and white simply won. 10 moves, no less. So the games, of course, black is helping. I mean, he's making some huge mistakes, but these are the sort of mistakes our opponents are likely to play. And that is why we are analyzing these games. So, first game, we see the 97 line. Let's go to the next one. Again, we have Greco against an unknown opponent. So e4, e5, f4, black takes. We play our bishop c4 idea, and here we have queen h4 check. Now, we cannot play g3 because we are losing on the spot. We know this. A lot of threats. Impossible to deal with all of them. So against queen h4, we'll simply play king f1, and black in this game he plays with d6. We know, and we saw this in other chapters, for black it is much better to play a move like d5, and the game remains complicated, but at least he manages to open lines for his pieces. He's also speeding his development up, but here, after king f1, he decides to play the quiet d6, but this gives us the tempi we need to develop our pieces. Here we also attack the queen on h4, and black decides to play this weird move. And, well, it is weird because you don't expect bishop g4 from black. What you expect is something like queen h6, queen f6, even queen d8, but in all of these scenarios we have reasons to develop as white and to create an attack. For instance, if he plays queen f6, which is probably the most natural move by black, I can play knight c3. I continue creating new threats, and if he plays a move like c6, well, here I can play d4, and again I have a huge development. He's playing with the queen only. This cannot be correct from black's point of view. From a development point of view, this is just bad for black. So here black plays this move, and despite being a weird move, this bishop g4 has a point. I mean, black is up a pawn, and if we take the queen on h4, black is delighted to trade queens off. Without queens, the attack is no longer powerful. So this move, as I was saying, has a point, but black, white continues developing his pieces with d4, and black, as usual, in this line, he starts making mistakes. And here he plays queen h6. The move is not losing, but we can tell this move is not correct. Maybe black, he was trying to protect the pawn on f4, but as white, this is not our main goal. I mean, if we can, we'll take it, but what we are trying to do is knight c3, getting our pieces out. I can even try queen d3 at some point to unpin my knight on f3, and again I continue attacking. I want to bring all my pieces to the center and start fighting an attack. That's what I want to do. If I can take on f4, as I was saying, I'll do it, but that's not high priority at the time. So black plays queen h6. He's defending a pawn we didn't want to take yet. And after queen h6, knight c3 was the best move in my opinion. Again, we have a lot of counterplay, a lot of attack. Whenever he plays a move like g5, well, here at knight d5 looks crushing, and then I'll add a move like h4, and suddenly his king side is falling apart. But after queen h6, white plays this move. The move itself, if you analyze this with an engine, you'll realize this move is a mistake, but that's if you analyze this with an engine. In reality, in practice, it is tough for black to defend this, and in this game, he wasn't able to do so. He played queen h3 check, which looks good because he unpins and he also occupies the h3 square, but we simply play king f2, and again, he's in trouble. He's been moving the queen too much, he has no development whatsoever, and we are ready to attack as white. Again, black, as the say goes, a mistake is followed by another one. He takes the pawn on g3, we take back, and here we'll understand black's idea, because at first glance when you see these moves, you think black is going crazy because the queen on h3 is trapped and doesn't have a way out. But here black saw bishop takes f3. And this move, I mean, the whole idea has a point. He wants to trade pieces off, and once we take on f3, the queen is simply going back to d7. The queen escapes, and black keeps an extra pawn. So this whole idea is not that crazy from black. He's not losing the queen. So after bishop takes, here's where we have a tactic as white, and we don't have to be surprised we have a tactic because we have a strong development, and black, he's been messing around with his pieces. So what I suggest here is you pause the video and you try finding the best continuation for white. Imagine this is a real game and you have to analyze as much as you can, and then you compare your analysis with the video. What I'll do now is 20, half a minute pause just in case, and then I'll continue talking. Okay, so in this position, after bishop takes f3, as white we have a couple of possibilities. We also know some moves are not correct. This move we know is not correct because he plays bishop takes d1, we traded queens off, we are also running out of material, we are down a piece, so we know rook takes queen on h3 is not possible. You probably thought about queen takes f3, because then, well, first of all we take the bishop on f3, second of all, we attack the queen, we also attack the pawn on f7, so this looks just right for white. We know he's going to play queen d7. Despite being down on material, we know we have a great position because we have more development. We have the bishop pair, and black, he still has development issues. So if you saw this variation, then you know at least you got a slight advantage. But the thing is, after bishop takes f3, we can switch the move order and play something else instead. Queen takes f3, attacks the f7 pawn, and the queen is also hanging. But what about taking on f7 first? What happens? This check is the winning move. The key is, if he takes, then I play queen takes f3 check. And of course, once he moves the king, I take the queen, and this is game over. So, after bishop takes f7, he has no choice but to move the king to d8. And d8 looks like the best square. If he plays king d7, then the queen has less squares to run away to. So after king d8, now the simple queen takes f3. We basically get the same position, difference being we took the pawn on f7 and we also destroyed his kingside safety. So queen takes f3, we take on f7, we play queen takes f3. Now queen d7. If you analyze this position, if you analyze still queen d7, then that's even better. And here, the winning move, we have a lot of winning moves, but I like bishop d5. It is good to spot unprotected pieces, and here we see both bishop f8 and b7. They are both hanging, and of course black, he cannot protect both at once. If he protects bishop f8, I take on b7 and then I take his rook. And if he protects b7, then I take on f8 with check. So bishop d5 is the final blow, and then black has to give up. And then the entire variation goes bishop takes, we take on f7, this is the winning move, but it is good if we analyze further with king d8, we take queen d7, bishop d5, and then black has to resign. Now, believe it or not, in this position, white didn't play bishop d5, which is by far the main move. Instead, he played the unbelievable rook takes h7, another crazy move by white. The thing is, he has to take, otherwise we take the rook on h8, and believe it or not, he's also losing here, because every single piece is hanging. Rook is hanging, bishop f8 is hanging, in some scenarios this pawn is hanging as well. So, let's see how the game finishes. Rook h2 check, king g1. There's no counterplay for black here, he only has a couple of checks and that's it. And here he decides to take on c2. Whether he plays this or queen h3, it is the same result. As you can see here, we take on f8 with check, and it is tough to believe that king is escaping, but let's see what happened in the game. This move, by the way, rook takes h7, it is great looking, it is like fireworks, but bishop d5 was much simpler for white, not risking anything. And this move, by the way, is giving black some counterplay with the rook. You need to know that games played at, the very first games in chess, we had a romantic style. Most of these games are plenty of sacrifices, and that's good because the King's Gambit, it is about sacrifices. So, okay, black decided to play rook takes c2. Here we have queen takes f8. How this game finishes is really impressive, and it's also, I've seen this tactical motifs in a lot of puzzles. Bishop here, king d7, and again we have a great move by white here. Once more, I invite you to pause the video, take your time, and find the winning move by white. And just in case, I'll make a half a minute pause, 20 second, half a minute pause, and then I'll continue talking. Okay, so in this position after king d7, the last thing we'll do is trade queens off. I mean, even if we take on e8, we still have the advantage. Those bishops are quite powerful. I can even play knight a3, speed my development up, and it is tough to believe black can resist in this position. But, I mean, trading queens off is not a possibility here since he's got the king on d7. So, we need to be careful about our next move, because he's also escaping to the queen side, and we don't want to offer him any counterplay. So queen takes is possible, then he plays king c6. The thing is, we don't have any mate coming soon, and then he plays king b6. He'll probably play a6, and if somehow he hides his king on a7, then we need to be extremely careful, because that rook on c2 is still alive, and our king on g1 is not safe at all. So queen takes pawn on g7, possible but not accurate. Queen f5 check. I think this is better, but still after king here, you're not able to find any mating move. If queen d5, well, if he goes to d7, then again I don't see a mate. And after this, well, if he plays like this, then worst case scenario, I play queen b3 check, and I take the rook on c2. So queen f5 is probably one of the best moves we have, but there's another move here which is winning the game on the spot. We see the queen on e8 is only being protected by king d7. So we know deviation is one of the key tactics we have in chess, and bishop e6 is winning on the spot. He cannot play king d8, he cannot play king e7. If he takes, well, then we take on e8 and it's mate in 1. And after bishop e6, if queen takes, we have queen d8, king c6, and a fourchette, which wins the game on the spot. Here, well, the game continues for a couple of extra moves, but needless to say, white is mating soon, and after king e5, queen e8, this, queen e4, king c5, bishop e3, checkmate. So this is one of my favorite games in the King's Gambit. As you can see, the King's Gambit is full of possibilities, and we always need to be careful. But the good news is that whether we are in a better position or a worse position, we are the ones attacking. And if things like this are possible, I mean, here, again, bishop d5 was simple, but if things like this are possible with our king on f2, then that means the King's Gambit has a lot of potential. And again, black might be better according to theory, but practice says otherwise, and black needs to be a great defender to have a successful defense. So, given the chance, I would play all this as white and let my opponents defend if they can. So that's all for this video. In next videos we'll continue analyzing games like this, but this video is long enough. So I hope you found this useful, I hope you could learn something, and of course I want to see you guys in my next chapters. Thank you.